All right, guys, welcome to Between the Watts. We've been gone a couple weeks, so we've got a lot to catch up on, starting with a whole new slew of e-bikes coming out, including Aventon's new mid-drive Aventure. We have a Bosch Performance CX update to their motor we're going to talk about. Justin just got back from China Cycle 2025. I'll do a quick update on the tariffs, and we take your questions from the audience.
All right, so like Mike said, we have a lot to go over. We got a lot coming down the pipe. So Mike, take it away. Tell us what we got coming down.
Well, I know a lot of people in the comment section, I reply to you guys and I hear a lot. What is the deal with Aventon's new mid-drive? Is it ever going to happen? Was it just, was that all just rumors? What's the deal? Well, we finally got our hands on the new Aventure mid-drive, or the Aventure M. So I could give you a couple details right off the bat. It's got the A100 mid-drive, the same one they use in the Rambless, and 100 Newton meters of torque, which is awesome. Also, it's got the new 1x10 Shimano Qs with electronic shifting, which I know a lot of people are going to be pumped about. But you just got finished range testing it. What are your just quick initial thoughts?
Yeah, so initial thoughts on it is I'm really happy that they used the A100 motor, because it's a very smooth yet powerful motor. Really good engagement. If you're wanting kind of a next level of performance of a fat tire, stay tuned. I won't spoil what we're going to say. And then the only other thing that I did want to clear up, because we are getting a lot of questions on the Aventure 3 that just came out versus the Aventure M.
A lot of confusion, yes.
Yeah, they kind of thought the Aventure 3 was the mid-drive version. That's not the case. So again, there's the Aventure 3 that just came out. It's the new fat tire rear hub motor Adventure. And then one coming down the pipeline, which they announced at Sea Otter, is the Aventure M. And that has their mid-drive motor.
Yeah, we published a short, so you can get a quick sneak peek of it if you want to check that out. But we're doing the testing now. We're going to do a full review. In just a couple weeks, you guys can keep an eye out for that quick review to come out. Rad Power Bikes has updated their RadRunner series. They've got 3 new trim levels. They have their RadRunner, they have the RadRunner Plus, and the RadRunner Max. And each one gets kind of progressively more capable, more range, more, in some cases, more speed. It goes from class 2 to class 3, and even more payload along the way. So they're just priced at different tiers, kind of just based on what kind of bike and how much performance you need out of it. One cool thing they added to it this time around is the traffic safety radar system. In the display while you're riding the bike. If you ride on city streets, you're kind of always doing that look over your shoulder, wondering if a car is creeping up on you. Well, they went ahead and added a literal radar system that you can't see it on the bike. It's hidden in the taillight. But what it does is it's calculating traffic coming up behind you, and it's giving you a display readout that shows you real time how fast they're approaching, and you know exactly when they pass. Just a super cool feature for a commuter bike, and I just thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I've been waiting for 3 years for a RadRunner update.
Yes.
This is one of the most iconic classic e-bikes. I think, way down the road when we go back to the e-bike museum for us super crazy e-bike geeks, I do actually think the RadRunner deserves a spot there.
Kind of an OG of e-bike.
Yes, it is. And so I was a little surprised that they kept the look the same. It's very similar. The Max, they shortened the wheelbase. They did some really cool tech stuff. But I think it's because it's such a classic bike that they kept it like that. So stay tuned. Mike, you've got the RadRunner Max review wrapped up. We're just editing now, right?
That was about to go live right now. Yep.
Okay, so stay tuned for those. We're just really excited to see updates and refreshes on the RadRunner lines.
And just kind of pushing the industry as a whole with that new tech. I just think it's really cool altogether. And then Trek has released 2 new bikes, 2 new series of bikes. Their new FX Plus one, which is kind of their commuter lifestyle bike, city commuter bike, but it's a rear hub motor, which we haven't really seen much of Trek do in the past. And they have a 500 watt motor on it. And the biggest thing is, that thing is sub $2,000. So this should be a really interesting offering from Trek in general. Have you checked out that bike?
I have not checked it out yet. And we'll see it. Again, we just got it in. We have the Electra Townie Go coming as well. Maybe tell a little bit about that, because there's 2 key points that I want to touch on those bikes after we've given an overview.
Yeah, so there's 2 things that they actually both share that's really cool. One is going to be their mag charging. So think your Apple MagSafe charging, a magnetic attachment. They've added that now with Trek's charging system. So no more trying to plug your cord in the right way, trying to line it up the right way in dark. You just get it near it, it attaches to it, and it charges. But even beyond that, they added a BMS system that's kind of a smart battery charger. So if you guys remember, we talked about keeping your battery between 30 and 80% or something like that. This is built into that. So if you want to, you can keep it to where it'll only charge between 30 and 80%, depending on, how much you're using the bike and how much charge you need. But anyway, really cool feature that's just going to go a long way in extending the life of that bike.
Yeah. And, when we actually talked about that, how to extend the life of your battery, some of that came from my conversation with Electra and Trek. And a couple of the key takeaways that I have from this is, first of all, you have Trek coming into the sub $2,000 market. They're directly going after Aventon, Rad.
Yeah, I feel like they're shooting a shot over
Lectric.
the
Like it's just straight up now they're looking at them as competition, similar to what I heard at Sea Otter, right? And so to come into that space directly at them at a same price point with a rear hub motor instead of a mid drive and a throttle is just kind of super cool.
That's a huge part I didn't bring up, the throttle. Yeah. So gone are the days of legacy brands never putting throttles on e-bikes, because now we've got it. It's really cool.
Yeah, and I think it's because their bike dealers were just telling them that people were coming in asking for throttles.
Yes.
And so this is them really coming into the space. So we're going to see how this is going to play out. I'm really excited to get these bikes out and test them and see how they compare. And I'm also very excited about that Electra Townie. It just looks like a really nice classic beach cruiser style bike with some really cool colors.
One of their colors is a shark gray. It's kind of a metallic gray, but it's got brown accents. It looks super cool. That'd definitely be what I'd go for.
Yeah, I'm hoping that's the one they send us. We don't know yet. But yeah, so, and then the last thing that I just wanted to point out is you really do see Trek's experience stepping in with the battery BMS and with just the ability to, with the charger to mount it on the wall.
Wall mounted.
I have wanted that for so long. Like in my garage, I've got like 10 different bike mounts. And I zip tie all the battery chargers to the bike mount, so you have to put it back in the same spot. And I literally have said this, I don't know how many times, why can't someone just make this to where I can stick it on the dang wall? And so I already love the fact that they're doing that, and I hope the rest of the industry follows suit on those two things.
That's a solid point. Well, on one hand, you're way more organized than me because I still trip over my chargers in my garage. But with that said, I think Trek coming into the market with rear hub motors and some better BMS systems, I think it just elevates the whole industry altogether. I think it's a good thing, just a net good for everybody.
Yes.
All right, guys. So as you know, we have partnered with Pedro's. They are one of the sponsors of our show. So we always give them a quick shout out and just highlight one of their gear things that we like. This week is not super sexy as far as gear goes, but it is definitely one of the things if you're going to work on your bike, you're going to need to have a good set. And that is going to be Torx and Allen keys. So Pedro's obviously has a full lineup of all of these. One thing that I've really appreciated about these is if you've bought cheaper Allen wrenches in the past, you know that when you start to tighten things and when you start to use them, they tend to round off corners if you're not holding them perfectly straight. This hardened steel, whatever they've used, has been really durable. We've been using these things for months and months without any issues at all. And so they've got everything from the Torx 90-degree styles to the old school L bend and the tri style. Anyway, they've all been really good. I've really enjoyed using them. And the deal with tools is kind of buy once, cry once. I know it sucks, but it's the best way to do it. That way you're not just replacing things and things are breaking constantly. So anyway, thank you to Pedro's for sponsoring the show. All right, guys. So up next, there is a new, just kind of news coming out from Bosch mid-drive motors. Justin, you have the scoop on that. So what is the deal with the latest from Bosch?
So we're a few weeks late on this. Apologize, but again, I was out of town.
And then I got sick.
Yes. So, but Bosch just did an OTA update of their Performance Line CX motors. And so that's the newer Performance Line CX. That's the BDU 384Y, not their older ones. But basically what it did is it pushed it from 85 Newton meters of torque to 100 Newton meters of torque and 700 watts of power with 400% assist.
So what you're telling me is that that power was always there. We just didn't have access to it.
And they kind of hinted that when they launched the new motors. And so this was kind of like the best or the worst kept secret.
Better late than never.
Right. We always knew that they were coming out with this, that they were going to push that limit. And it's really, so I had the opportunity to test ride one of these bikes in Santa Cruz before Sea Otter. And honestly, I was blown away. Like it was everything that they have done on this update. 2 thumbs up. Again, I only had 1 day on it, but it is absolutely fantastic. They're entering that, the 100 Newton meter torque war kind of with DJI, with Specialized, with their latest motor update. And I think there's a lot of cool things with this one. Specifically, The sensors are improved.
Like the torque
Yes.
sensor?
So there's the torque sensor, the cadence sensor, and then they have an inertial measurement unit that they also have that basically lets you dial up or down the responsiveness kind of right out of the gate.
Right.
Right. So with the Bosch, the old Performance CX, especially with the CXR, the race motor, it could get really peppy really fast. So one of the challenges, especially again on the race motor, is if you're going through like some technical section, you turn those cranks, it can go. So you really, I mean, it's part of what I love about the Bosch, but it's also just something that you kind of tell people about so they know what to expect. In this case, with this update, they've actually given you way more control over that responsiveness. And so I actually dialed it down just a little bit. So full power, dial down the responsiveness, and I loved it. Like it really is awesome. You know, we're going to be testing that against the new Specialized motor, and hopefully we'll get a DJI in here at some point as well. But I really do think what Bosch has done with this update is fantastic, and they're going to be really successful on that. You know, it's kind of funny as I've talked to the Bosch engineers, the ones from Germany.
Yeah.
Like I can tell they're like, they think 85 Newton meters of torque and 640 watts or whatever, 340%, assist is perfect. They don't feel like you need more.
You can always do more.
I think we're different here in America where we want more power. We want all of that. And so I do like how they listened to their dealers and their partners here in the US and bumped that up because they obviously had the mechanical capabilities.
I mean, I think the market would have spoke for itself. I mean, if you have other brands that are going to come out with higher rated Newton, higher torque ratings, people are going to look for that stuff. They ask about that stuff. So it matters to the consumer for sure.
Yeah. And so really cool what they're doing. And one other part that I think is nice is they have the Performance CX and the Performance CXR. So the CXR is the new race motor, right? And it has the same output. So you still have 100 Newton meters of torque, 400% assist, and 700 watts of power. So different than Specialized, where to get the full torque that motor does, you have to pay for the S-Works.
Yeah.
This you don't have to do. The internals are a little bit different. So this motor is 6 pounds instead of 6.2 pounds. So they shave those 0.2 pounds on the gears inside. So the gears inside.
So they changed the material?
Yeah, so there's titanium and nylon. I'm assuming the other has some nylon as well. But basically just they made it a little bit smaller, a little bit lighter. I kind of liken it to going XTR with Shimano versus XT. Do you need it? No.
Get a little lighter.
It's kind of nice, and so if you are that person that wants kind of the best, the fastest, there is an extra race mode on that motor that you can kind of unleash. But you don't need it.
I couldn't tell you how many times I've been shopping for a component and go, that's the one I want or need. That's the one I want.
Yes,
it's kind of that thing.
Exactly. So that's what they've done. Really well done there. We'll be doing some testing on that again against some Specialized and some other of these 100 Newton meter, motors.
Yeah.
And so stay tuned on that. And any questions you have, just shoot them over.
I saw something about EMTB plus mode. What is?
Yes. So they have. Bosch has always had kind of their auto mode.
Yeah.
And now they have an EMTB plus mode, which is kind of like an improved or like just a mode that is kind of auto mode for EMTB specific.
Okay.
It really fun.
Kind of adapting to your ride as you go.
Yeah. And it really, again, I haven't spent enough time on it to like fully say what I think about it.
Sure.
But my initial takeaway was I really liked the power. I really liked the feel and the weight and the design. Like I think you'll be able to get a lot of cool bike designs on the motor because they made it a little bit smaller. But the controllability that I had, I don't know if that's the right word, but me being able to go in and dial down the power, up the power, the responsiveness, et cetera, and really fine tune it for how I want to ride.
And depending on where you're riding.
Yeah.
Certain trails require a lot less power and some require a lot more. It just depends on what you're doing.
Yeah. Here we have so much technical rocky
like Zen
stuff that if it gets too powerful, that rear tire can spin out. So I can dial that responsiveness down, have the tires stick a little bit more, but still have that torque and the watts that I need to just have a ton of fun.
That's super cool.
All right. So next, Mike, give us a quick tariff update. I know we've talked a lot about tariffs We hope as much as you do that we can stop talking about tariffs pretty soon, but it is very important to the bike industry. So Mike, tell us where we're at.
Yeah, I will make this quick, but just give you the quick updates as well. So everybody knows a couple months back, we went up to 145% when the whole tariff wars kicked off with China. Well, they met on, or not met, but they agreed on May 12th. So just a couple weeks ago to do a 90-day pause or a 3-month pause to take these tariffs down to what turns out now to be about 55% for e-bikes. So we've reduced it by about 90%. But again, that's a 90-day pause. Who knows what's coming after that? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, and the main takeaways for me are, number one, it didn't go back down to 30% for e-bikes, because this is the 30%. They took essentially that extra 145% tariff,
Right,
and they added that to the already 25 plus, was it 11% on top of that?
Mm-hmm.
So there was more than just the 145.
Mm-hmm.
That 145% went down to 30. And so you have the 30% on top of the 25%, on top of the 11% duty. And that's where, for e-bikes, from the reporting that People for Bikes has done, shout out to People for Bikes, fantastic.
yeah, they have a
what
good
they're
resource
doing.
online if you want to check it out.
They're reporting back that we're right about 55% right now for e-bikes. And the thing that I want to make very clear is 55% it's not just a small number. That does impact pricing. That is going to, this is not a win. This is not a good scenario for the bike industry, in my opinion. So I hope that over this 90-day period that we can get back at least to where we were before any of this started, and you're back down to the 25% base tariff plus the 11%. That's operational. Mm-hmm. Outside of that, and we'll get into this as we go into China cycle, because this theme definitely carried over there. But 55%, it's a lot, and it's hard to manage, especially when, from a business perspective, you don't know what's going to happen 3 months from now.
Yeah,
So
imagine being a brand trying to prepare.
really hard. And so we're seeing brands kind of short-term plan, but not long-term plan. So I'm still going to encourage everyone to go write their congressman and tell them what you personally think about the tariffs. Either way, I think that's always good to give them feedback. Again, personally, for us, we are seeing still some of those negative consequences of those tariffs with price increases along the line from multiple brands.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to be happy when this all gets sorted out and ended, because it's getting exhausting.
Yes.
All right, so I know you just got back from China Cycle 2025. As much as I wanted to go, I did not want to do that flight you did. So tell us about China Cycle.
Well, I'm over jet lag, which is nice. Took about a week.
Well, you had 2 trips too, so you're...
Yeah. So we spent just about a week plus in China, touring 7 different factories. Went to China Cycle, which was essentially a Eurobike Sea Otter event in China that absolutely blew my mind.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that level
massive,
of a show. It is absolutely massive. Yeah. Over 1,600 companies
booths?
with booths.
Whoa.
It was massive. I was exhausted.
That's like trying to cover Disney World in one day. Tough.
You can't do it. I had 3 days and I still couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Right. But it was a very interesting time to go to China. I kind of went there expecting a lot of anger towards the tariffs.
Oh,
hey, they're pissed off because, we put all these tariffs and they retaliate, tariff war. But I was very surprised at the responses of these companies. They were very calm, calculated, and strategic. Mm-hmm. Essentially, and this wasn't just one person, this was multiple brands across multiple factories. They all basically just said, well, it's obviously not smart for us to have all manufacturing in China, so we're going to expand and go elsewhere. So that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of those manufacturers expanding into Cambodia, Vietnam, and Hungary. So Eastern Europe. Mm-hmm. And so they're doing this to essentially diversify their risk.
Mm-hmm. It's a smart play.
It's a forced play almost, okay, right? It has to happen.
Yeah.
They can't just throw up a factory overnight. There's a lot of training. There's technical training.
Some
and it takes a lot of time to train the assembly line, mm-hmm. To build everything. But they've been doing this for a little while, and this is just kind of ramping up that shift outside of China. So that is happening. That's coming down the pipeline. Probably the bigger long-term effect, though, the thing that I kind of just noticed in the side comments from people, right? Not official statements or anything like that, just more kind of, again, off-the-cuff comments, just discussion with individuals, is the loss of trust that they have now in the USA, where the US is such a big part of their market and what they're looking to build stuff for. That's taken a hit. And I don't know. I think that's going to take a while to repair, if it ever gets repaired. Because again, with this kind of more strategic outlook, they're looking for other partners. And I heard several times comments on how Europe is now more willing to talk to them. Japan is more willing to talk to them. Southeast Asia is more willing to talk and work with them closely because of this tariff war. So there's kind of a deeper long-term relationship damage that I think has been done, that I'm seeing, just loss of confidence and trust, because they don't really know what's going to happen. And so I think for how that plays into the e-bike world is, yes, we're going to see people shifting. They're going to be, making different parts at other places. We'll have some cost increase, but those will hopefully be mitigated by moving around to different countries. But I don't know what's going to happen with tariffs on other countries after this pause there.
Sure.
So still a lot of things up in the air, but they are being very rational and strategic with how they're responding and what they're doing. So again, I hope we can kind of repair that and get back to normal. But, there are a couple brands that I think are very strategically positioned to take advantage of this, actually. So you have Motinova, who's a very large, we're talking Fortune 500 global company that does $50 billion plus in sales every year, that make a ton of electric motors. They have manufacturing capability outside of China already. And so I think we're going to start seeing brands kind of shift there versus some of the other Chinese manufacturers. And then Ananda as well, which, Ananda is one of the bigger brands anyways. And we review a lot of bikes with Ananda motors. They're also set up outside of China already. And so I do expect to see more motors from those two brands specifically, and then also see other brands continue to shift manufacturing away.
Yeah, that shakeout's going to be pretty interesting. But speaking of motors, any kind of like cool new tech motors, anything like that coming out from China Cycle? Or was it?
So cool, actually. That was, again, one of the things that was just kind of shocking, right? Like, you step into the China Cycle, and it's kind of a combination of CES, like old school CES, where everything's over the top. These booths were like 2 stories tall, conference rooms up top, massive displays, contests out in front. Like, just a whole nother level than what you see at Sea Otter or Eurobike, but it had the size of Eurobike. Like, and probably even more booths than Eurobike. So it had just the sheer size, and the display quality was just fantastic. And then there was new tech coming out of China.
Nice.
And so that's, they had the China Cycle Awards. And what's cool for us specifically is a lot of that was geared towards e-bikes, right? Because they make so many of the components for e-bikes. That's a big deal, where I feel Sea Otter is still much more analog bike focused, gravel road, mountain bike.
Performance side.
This, tons of focus on E. So it really is possibly the coolest e-bike show that I've been to. And specifically talking about motors, when Pinion came out with their MGU, that internal gearbox motor, a couple of years ago, it was like the biggest talk of Eurobike, right? Everybody wanted to try that out. You had Lectric put the Pinion in one of their bikes, just a lot of cool things there. Well, what happened is you had Bafang, you had Ananda, you had some of these brands look at the Pinion MGU and say, "Oh, let's do that with a hub motor," right? And so we saw Bafang's, their H730. That's their automatic hub motor. That's their 3-speed. They also have a 5-speed, and they launched that about last year at China Cycle. I hadn't seen it yet. The winner for the award actually went to Ananda with their R900, and that's their electronically controlled shifting hub motor. And so it's all, again, electronic. So it's supposedly more crisp and smooth. You can kind of shift under tension a little bit better than you can with Bafang's. I rode both of them, and very impressed.
What does that do to the size of the physical motor?
It's not that much bigger.
Not a big
That's
change.
the thing. We need to get some
Yeah.
and weigh them and like check it out. But basically, you then have a carbon gates belt drive with an internal gear hub motor.
Yeah.
Reduces maintenance, makes it almost to where like the automatic shifting on these was incredibly impressive. Like we went to Ananda's headquarters and I rode it around a little bit, and they had a parking garage. And so I would ride it down into the parking garage,
Come back up.
and it was pretty steep, right?
Yeah.
And so I was really testing that automatic shifting and how
Was it downshifting for you? Like when you hit the hill?
Yes, it was downshifting. It was upshifting.
That's pretty sweet.
It was really impressive. It was capped at 15 miles per hour. So I'm waiting for the US version.
Get this one over here. Yeah.
Get it over here. But for Europe, amazing.
Yeah.
Like really great. And I think that these motors are actually going to be the future of kind of the city, the trekking, the cruiser.
Lifestyle bikes.
Yeah, the lifestyle bikes, because you don't have to think, right? So many people who are now getting on e-bikes, and I think this is absolutely fantastic, haven't ridden a bike in 30, 40, I mean, my mom, I think it was 50 years, right? And so
Same for
worrying
mine,
about the shifting, the throttle, the brakes, like all of that in addition to balance, if you can remove some of that from the equation, really cool.
Well, and then just take away the chain grease, the the maintenance. You just makes it easier and more accessible for everybody. So that's cool.
And so I do think that is a trend that, again, we saw at China Cycle 2025 that's going to continue. And I hope in the near future to start seeing more and more of these city lifestyle bikes with those types of system on them. And again, the performance, it was impressive.
Yeah.
So I haven't taken them through a full testing or anything yet, but really cool what they're coming out with there.
I'm a little jealous. You got a sneak peek of behind the curtain over there. So what's going on?
Speaking of motors, there was another one though from Star Union. So Star Union is not a company that you would normally think of for motors.
No, I just was.
In fact, they're the ones that did the
brake
602 brakes with Lectric. They're much larger than I thought they were. Very large company, kind of family run company, and they're doing a lot of really cool things. One of the things, and they won the award for, was their magnetic gear mid-drive or MGM motor.
A magnetic gear drive.
Yes.
So not electronic. It's using a magnet system.
Yeah, you're starting to get above my pay grade on this. And like he was showing it to me, explaining it to me. I definitely need some more time on the physics of it all.
Sure.
But the part that matters is that it's lighter and quieter than the TQ HPR 50.
Which is awesome.
Yes.
Already.
And, I mean, you just reviewed that truck.
Just wrote it today.
And I think, didn't your title say something about like the quietest motor you've ever?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's super quiet, but the Star Union is actually more powerful. So the Star Union currently has 80 Newton meters of torque. So 80 versus 50.
Yeah.
Right. Which is actually a pretty big deal.
On what size motor?
In terms of like the actual physical size?
No, like on 80 Newton meters or 50 Newton meters on like a 500 watt or?
I actually don't remember.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was 250 watts though.
Okay.
Right. So it's a classic mid-drive motor, 250 watts. Sorry, I don't have that in front of me. But they kind of hinted that they'll be able to push that to 90 to 95 Newton meters.
That's going to be sweet.
And so, when we're talking about power, like DJI power, Specialized 3.1, Bosch new Performance CX or CXR, it's not quite there at that 100 Newton meter plus, but being as lightweight and compact, I mean, this is like seriously one of the smallest, lightest weight motors that I've seen. And I did ride it around. I felt the power, it felt really good. It was on flat, so I can't really, comment.
Sure.
I think automatically out of the gate, it is a fantastic option for e-gravel and e-road bikes. Like absolutely knock it out of the park. Crazy fun on those.
Imagine a light road or gravel frame with that kind of power and a small motor. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, it'd be really cool. If I'm really curious to see how it does in the mountain bike scenario. Because 90, 95 Newton meters of torque. I mean, that's what the old Specialized, I'm still riding that bike and I still love it. So it's really cool what they've done coming from a brand, Star Union, that most people probably haven't heard of outside of brakes.
Sure. I'll be honest, that's the only time I heard of them.
Yeah, just very impressed. And, overall impressions from China Cycle. We're going to have a video that comes out that kind of does a walkthrough with a lot of different people, and you'll see the magnitude of this. But it was, again, just blown away. Really cool to see. And the last part that really stood out to me was the Chinese consumer. You've got 1.4 billion people that don't quite, I mean, it's not like 25% of those people ride bikes. Like electric scooters and mopeds, I mean, they do tens of millions of those every year. But as you're driving around, you know, Shanghai and like these other places, you don't see hardly anyone riding bikes and, you know, electric pedal bikes.
Yeah.
Kind of surprised.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But at the show, they had one bay that was entirely dedicated more to the Chinese brands. And there were some really cool Chinese brands. Dragon, Battle, Troxus actually had some really cool road and gravel bikes. Like they had,
a while since we reviewed it there.
They had pro teams. They had, and I'm seeing kind of the Chinese consumer. They're almost like a sleeping dragon, I feel, where with all the turmoil that's going on as China's looking to strengthen their relationship in Europe, in Asia, they're also starting to market to their own consumers. Mm-hmm. And so you start waking up some of those 1.4 billion people, you're going to have massive amounts of growth coming out of China. And I think it's a little bigger than what we're thinking. Mm-hmm. And it was really
just
cool.
by China Cycle alone, it's bigger than I thought.
Yeah. So I do think China Cycle is an event that is already one of the marquee cycling events.
Yeah.
Definitely one of the top, if not the top one for e-bikes.
That's very cool. All right, guys. So I always pour through our comments, reply to you guys, as always, try to get the info you're looking for. But every now and then I get a good question that I think probably is on other people's minds, and I just figure it's good to share here. So I will kick it off with kind of the first question we got, Justin. Says, I keep seeing all e-bike forums hating on hub motors these days, saying they're not worth investing into. They claim mid-drives are the way to go, and that's the only thing holding me back from buying this bike. That was posted by Kevin August on the Ride One Up Vorsa review. So I gave him a quick response that said, hey, you know, we might discuss this in the podcast today, but my quick answer is just be honest with yourself about the type of riding you're going to do and the type of bike, you know, performance you want out of a bike. And that's going to dictate a lot of that decision right there. But what are your thoughts on hub versus mid-drive? Are hubs junk and mid-drives the only way to go, or how do you see it?
So I categorically don't think one is better than the other for different use cases, right? It's kind of a bit like apples and oranges, where they both can be very good depending on what you want to use. Mm-hmm. So I would say the mid-drive motor is higher performance is how I usually describe it to people, where if you're more of a traditional cyclist, if you're going mountain biking, like 100% if you're mountain biking on single track, mid-drive's the way to go.
Yeah, I would not do that with a big heavy rear end on that.
No, yeah. I mean, just having that, like you said, heavier rear end where you've got that rear hub motor makes it really hard when you're cornering, just throws off your balance, jumping, taking a drop, going over rocks. Mm-hmm. Like you'll almost never see us recommend a rear hub.
Not for
mountain bike.
No.
I mean, there was the Summit one from Lectric, which was surprisingly good, right?
But even my critique of that was when I took it down single track, I felt a little weird with the weight back there. Yeah, that's what I felt.
If it's smooth single track, like green, you know, if you go to Trail Forks and you look up the different colors, if it's green, I think you're fine.
Yeah.
Right. But it's still not going to perform as good as mid-drive, as a mid-drive. So in that case, mid-drive is better. Now, if you're city commuting or cruising, what's your thoughts?
For me, take, for example, my favorite bike, which has been said 100 times here, the Roadster. That's a rear hub motor bike. I'm not in the market usually for a rear hub motor bike, but that's a perfect complement to that bike. It's lightweight. It gets you around town. I don't want to do anything aggressive or like performance with it. I want to just cruise back and forth to work, maybe on the weekends ride with my kids. A hub motor is phenomenal for that. And with the increase in torque sensors and how good they perform lately, you may not agree, but I would say if you took someone who didn't ride a ton of these bikes and you blindfolded them and just let them pedal, don't tell them anything, just let them pedal. I think a lot of people wouldn't know the difference with a good torque sensor hub drive and, you know, an average mid drive.
I'll say I agree with you on that.
Half the comments are just raging.
Yes, and I will agree and disagree. Mm-hmm. I'll agree that if someone hasn't ridden an e-bike before and you blindfold them, put them on with a hub versus a mid drive, they're not going to be able to tell the difference. They're going to have the really big smile on their face and just love either one. Yeah. Anyone who has ridden a decent amount of e-bikes, there is a different feel.
You will feel, yeah.
Again, the mid-drive has a little more natural feel to it. If you're wanting to have a motor that directly amplifies your wattage, then a mid-drive is going to be better. So if I'm putting in 100 Newton meters of torque and it's a, 4x multiplier, it's going to kick out 400, like that's obviously too high. That's wattage, not torque. Sorry. Right. If I'm putting in 100 watts, it's going to produce 400 watts. Right.
The 400%
that's a more
increase of your effort.
direct to my input, what I am putting into the pedal, where a hub motor is going to be, even in a torque sensor, that's going to be pushed from the rear. So it's still pushing you along instead of being amplified through the drivetrain. So there's a slightly different feel. And to be honest, when I have had, because I have, family, friends, they're, when they're looking at e-bikes, they'll come and they'll ride. And we've got behind us here, we've got 150 bikes. And they'll jump on bike after bike after bike. And ultimately, I actually find more people pick the hub motor over the mid-drive. One, it's cheaper. It's definitely a cheaper system. But two, they actually like the feel of it a little bit better. It feels a little more powerful, a little more peppy, especially up hills, because again, it is directly going into that rear wheel and pushing you a little bit up the hill. And just to kind of tie that back into what you were saying about the torque sensors, they're getting better now where, it feels more natural.
Some of them
quite hub drive.
Surprisingly good.
Yeah, but surprisingly good, but you still get a little bit more power kind of, again, pushing you. So it really, what I have seen is no, one is not better than the other depending on the use case. So, to Kevin, really depends on you. And if you want to send through your specific scenario, where you want to ride, how you want to ride the bike, then we can absolutely give you a more specific answer for the Ride One Up Forza.
Yeah, absolutely. Kevin, thank you for that question.
Okay, so what do we have next?
All right, so the next one is from Pat Connor, 6188, and this was on the Lectric XP4 review. He said, I'm curious on the two styles. He's referring to the frames. He said, which one gives you more stability on rough roads and paths? The step over looks more supportive. So I reviewed the Step-Thru, and I can only give my anecdotal experience on the Step-Thru. It felt good and responsive. It was not flexy at all. But I think a lot of that has to do with that new frame design. They kind of partnered up with that frame engineer who really did this good job on the frame. But then on top of that, if you just look at a more standard Step-Thru frame versus the Lectric XP4, your more standard one, say like I don't want to throw out any other brands, but they usually have a deeper V in the frame. The Electric's already kind of low. So I feel like there's more room on some Step-Thrus to feel more flex. But in the case of an XP4, it's already kind of a compact design. And I think it feels responsive and stiff.
Yeah, and I would agree. So I've spent quite a bit of time on both bikes. And from a stiffness standpoint, I could not tell much of a difference.
Yeah.
I did not put a front rack on. That's where I really start to see any kind of wobble going on.
The weight up front?
If we do that, so maybe we'll have to do that to fully give you the geek out answer.
Yeah.
But for normal riding, we've got weights that we've thrown on the back as well, 40 pounds of weights. Both have been really good. So I would actually just say go with the one that you think looks better.
Yeah.
For me, that's actually the Step-Thru. I like having the slightly lower step over height. They're both pretty low.
I like that new green, so whatever that one is, that's what I'll go for.
But really, just go with one. My recommendation is you don't need to worry about the stiffness. Lectric specifically beefed up the frame on both of these bikes to have it very stiff, very rigid, and capable on any road that you would normally take this on. You're not taking this on single track, to be clear. But if you're going camping, you got a dirt road, you're fine on both of those bikes.
Yeah, those can handle that no problem. Yeah, so that was the two questions I had. We've kind of yapped a lot today about all these different topics. Do you have anything before we head out for the day?
I think that's enough. We will definitely be having more, there's more things from China Cycle and the factory tours that we've got coming down the road. So if you have any specific question on those, drop them down below. And keep the questions coming. We really do love them. We only had time to do 2 today. This is a little bit longer episode because we've taken a couple weeks off, but we'll be back at this next week. So let us know what other questions you have.
Yeah, and keep an eye out for those reviews. We got reviews coming, the Aventure M, the mid-drive. We got the new bikes from Trek and Rad. So keep a lot of new stuff coming down the pipe, and we will see you guys next week.
And as always, again, more questions down below, the better. Like and subscribe. We're going to be doing this. We're going to try to do this weekly, might end up bi-weekly, but we'll have more to come. So definitely hit that bell so you get those notifications. And again, we'll hopefully see you out on the trail here soon.